So, we will be talking about forced sterilization, women who go to get a sterilization by choice, as well as the history of birth control. We'll be talking about feminist Margaret Sanger, and we will be talking about Puerto Rico. Um, all of them plays into the same conversation. Okay. So, before we get started on that conversation, we need to have a little bit of background. Okay. So the first term we are going to start with is race suicide, a term I didn't even know existed, okay? It was coined in the 1900s by sociologist Edward Ross, okay? And defined by dictionary.com, race suicide is the extinction of a racial or ethnic population that tends to result when, through the unwillingness of its members to have children, the birth rate falls below the death rate. Okay? So it originally meant, or it was originally believed, that old stock Americans were committing race suicide to be replaced by more fertile immigrant races. Okay? Now let's fast forward to 2020, and the translation would read white people committing race suicide to be replaced by more fertile non white races, to include immigrants. Okay? Now, the idea of race suicide was largely a response to perceived challenge to white male authority at the time of immense social upheaval. Okay? Non-white people and women were scapegoated; they were blamed. But what was not taken into consideration then, as now, is that there were societal changes, things like climate change, increasing cost of living, but the wages don't go up. Racism, discrimination, war, disease, all those things make having a smaller family or having no children at all more attractive. But they didn't care about that. In 1902, United States President Theodore Roosevelt called race suicide fundamentally infinitely more important than any other question in this country. And he argued that the man or woman who deliberately avoids marriage and has a heart so cold as to know no passion and a brain so shallow and selfish as to dislike having children is in effect a criminal against the race and should be an object of contemptuous abhorrence by all healthy people. He saw the duty to reproduce the American race as the overpowering consideration. Failure to fulfill this duty was condemned as an act of selfishness. Now, on paper, the concept of race suicide is rejected by sociologists and other scholars because of silly things like racism, anti feminism, xenophobia, and you know how closely it seems to be tied with eugenics. That's on paper, but we all know that in reality. Our next term is eugenics. Okay? Eugenics is the scientifically inaccurate theory that humans can be improved through selective breeding. Okay? Now, starting in the late 1800s, leaders and intellectuals worldwide perpetuated the eugenic beliefs and policies, and of course, it was based on racist and xenophobic attitudes, which still exist today. Okay? Now, because of this, it resulted in the involuntary sterilization of at least 60,000 people through 30 states by the 1970s. And it disproportionately targeted Latinos, Native Americans, African Americans, poor white people, people with disabilities, disproportionately targeted during the entirety of the 20th century. Okay? Eugenicists were crucial in the enactment of the discriminatory immigration legislation and probably crucial to the ones passed this day. Right? Now, the eugenicists, those who promoted procreation among the fittest in society, they encouraged middle class women to bear more children. Between 1900 and 1960, eugenicists appealed to middle class white women to become more family minded and to help better the race. Okay? Eugenicists often denied middle and upper class women sterilization and birth control. And that's a practice that still continues today.